Hi, welcome to the very first episode of Tuesday Tidbits. I want to share some of the things that I come across or I think of or I read about in everyday life that I want to remember, I want to implement into my life, and doesn't really fit anywhere else in my channel. So I thought I'd put together a few little pieces about things that are occurring to me and share them kind of randomly. The very first thing I want to share is something that I heard about on a podcast, Carolyn Winkler's podcast, and she talked about this concept of diversified fulfillment. And being the ADHD person that I am, I love that idea. My tendency is always to pick and choose and start and stop and begin and add more things all the time. And I can have a tendency to make that wrong, to have a problem with that, but I love the recognition of the fact that as someone with this type of brain, with an ADHD orientation, with a multi-potentialite perspective, with a creative perspective on things, that I can get fulfillment in many different ways, and that's the beauty of the type of brain that I have. So I love that concept, diversified fulfillment. Tidbit number 2. This is something I heard on Mel Robbins' podcast. She was interviewing Mindy Pels, and the conversation was around intermittent fasting, which I'm a big believer in. I'm not always successful at implementing it, but I'm a big believer in the power of it, even though it's come into question recently, and so I'm sure there's going to be a lot more content out in the zeitgeist about whether intermittent fasting is in fact healthy or not. But Mindy Pelz wrote a book called Fast Like a Girl, and in it she talks about the fact that women should only fast 3 weeks out of any given month, and that the week that women should generally take off is the week when they're menstruating. Well, if you're like me and you are postmenopausal, you don't menstruate, so I thought, how do you do that? And she gave a really sweet suggestion, which is when it's a full moon, take that next week, 7 days following the full moon. So I love the connection with the earth and the simplicity of that, and also the recognition of this particular stage of life. Tidbit number 3, I read about in Chris Gillibo, who runs the World Domination Summit, and he's written a bunch of books, but he has this idea, this concept of purposeful productivity. Well, if you are like me and many other people, we can get a little hung up in being productive for the sake of being productive. And so I like the context that he puts around productivity, which is always asking the question, did I learn something? Did I help someone? Did I have fun? Or did I make progress towards one of my goals? And this is a concept I've used for a long time, asking those same questions, almost the exact same questions, but I never coined the phrase purposeful productivity, which I really like. So thank you, Chris Gillibo, for that one. Numbers 4 and 5. We're in a crisis of loneliness. There's so much disconnection and so much possibility for us to find ways to reconnect with each other, to strengthen our relationships, to strengthen our bonds. And the first tip, a suggestion for deepening friendship, is to not let go of or to reinstate those actions that were typical of what people did in terms of friendship. So one of the things that they give as an example, and I noticed that I sometimes, because of all the conveniences of modern life, can stop asking for, can stop offering, is the simple act of picking my friends up at the airport or asking to be picked up at the airport. There are all kinds of reasons why we can justify, I'll just call an Uber, or it's hardly any money, or it doesn't make sense for my friend to drive out to get me. But it's those small acts of friendship, it's those small ways that we show each other our caring and that we reconnect that can add so much richness to our relationships and to our friendships. So I'm making a point now of telling my friends, please ask me to pick you up at the airport, and if I can't do it, I'll say no, and trying to stretch myself to ask for airport pickups too. So that's one example of how we can maintain friendships in the ways that we have done for centuries. Maybe not centuries around airport pickups, but the concept is that we did small things to help each other. And because because there's so many ways that we have modern conveniences at our disposal, sometimes we just don't bother doing that anymore. And so the invitation is to keep on finding those small ways that we strengthened and created bonds between our friends, us with our friends. And then tip number 5 is also a friendship tip. And it is a sweet little idea, and I think a lot of younger generation people do this already, and that is sharing your calendar or sharing your location as an act of bonding or connection or recognition of your friendship with other people. So mostly I share my location with my family members, but I think there's something that we can learn from younger generations where they share things like their calendars and share things like their location as an act of friendship. And the last one for today, tip number 6, is a way of approaching that desire so many of us have to help. And sometimes we have a tendency to help in ways that maybe are not welcome. I don't know where I heard this, to tell you the truth, and in fact I looked online, I searched it to try to find an original reference, because I do believe in attribution and in recognizing sources, but I couldn't figure out where this originally came from. The closest I could get to it was in a New York Times article. But the concept is, here's a way we can approach with 3 H's how our friends or our family members or our children want to be helped, and giving them the choice. And that is asking someone who is in a difficult situation, who we want to support, do you want to be helped? Do you want to be heard, or do you want to be hugged? Sometimes all people want is, in the middle of a difficult situation, is to be heard. They just want to be witnessed in their challenge. Sometimes people really do want our suggestions, our coaching, or our support in one form or another. And sometimes they just want reassurance in the form of a hug. So asking whether they want to be helped or heard or hugged is a great way of giving the power for what the interaction is back to that person, instead of assuming the kind of help that might be appreciated and we may be way off. So those are my first 6 Tuesday tidbits. I will see if we can make this happen every week and just bring you a hodgepodge of little tips, ideas, concepts, and things that I come across on a day-to-day life. And that's it. So we'll see you next time.